on to a public hearing on a resolution to adopt the West Broadway Corridor Community Vision Plan as an amendment to the 2005 Missoula County Growth Policy. And we'll have a staff report this evening from, who is providing our staff report this evening? Mr. Kress?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Mike Kress. I'm with the Office of Planning and Grants. So before you tonight is you have a couple resolutions for your consideration on the West Broadway Corridor Vision Plan. This, I think, is your all. I don't know. I won't give you a lot of history. You all have a memo attached that documents the public involvement, the public hearings that have been held to date. At your last PAZ meeting, there was a motion to present or bring forward two alternative versions. One that removes all reference to 3 lanes east of Orange Street along Broadway, and the other, the actual plan document itself. So you have those in front of you. I would just say a couple of things, that this process involved had extensive community participation throughout. We had a 2-day charrette process. In addition to workshops, there were several steering committee and technical committee meetings. And also just wanted to point out that the plan is a very broad vision that includes consideration of future needs, vision for future land uses, economic development, increased safety in the area, parks, trails, as well as suggestions for various transportation aspects of it. So with that, I would conclude my staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Kress. I appreciate that. And before we take public comment, I'll just offer a little more background. As Mr. Kress suggested, what is before council this evening is the product of considerable investment by the city of Missoula and the community, and we've had some help from the state as well in considering the West Broadway corridor not only as a transportation corridor, but as a commercial and residential corridor and neighborhood. What is before council this evening is the question of whether this vision plan, which is a product of that lengthy public process and investment, ought to be connected to our growth policy. And that question has everything to do with how we plan for the future. The product of the vision plan is not regulation, but offers guidance. That's cold comfort to some council members and some members of the community, but that's the fact of the matter, and again, that's what council is considering this evening. I've had a couple of folks comment to me, one in person, one via email, and a couple of folks over the course of time through the telephone say, so what are you doing to East Broadway? Are you changing that to 3 lanes? Why is the city changing East Broadway to 3 lanes? The city, at least under my leadership and direction today, has no plans for converting Broadway east of Orange Street to 3 lanes. If you hear something different, you're more than welcome to call me. If council members have a different desire, they're welcome to make a referral to that effect. Today there's no plan, there's also no money to do that. And in fact, I can't imagine why we would want to spend our time that way. So again, the question tonight is whether folks are interested in adopting this broad plan, which has a number of alternatives, and amending our growth policy to reflect that community process and investment. So that's what's before us, and I am happy to entertain public comment. The other thing you all ought to know this evening is Councilman Strohmeyer has asked that this item be returned to committee, which is his prerogative. In doing so, the council and public process continues. Councilman Strohmeyer has asked that we postpone consideration of this piece in hopes that the Greater Downtown Master Plan considers this public process and community investment in another public process and community investment, so that they're not working apart but working in conjunction. And I don't mean to put words in his mouth. He can make that case when the time comes. So I imagine this item will be returning to committee this evening for further consideration over time. So with that, if you'd like to talk to us about this plan and what's before us this evening, please step to the microphone. Mr. Giordano.
Bob Giordano. I represent Missoula Institute for Sustainable Transportation, which includes the Free Cycle Bike Program. I would like to ask that the council do adopt the West Broadway Vision Plan as it was crafted over 2 years. I participated in that whole process. A lot of meetings, a lot of long meetings, a lot of maps pulling out, a lot of conversation. And I think it's a good product. I think it's good for the community, mixing land use and transportation, looking at how Broadway is a part of our community and vice versa. We all know the West Broadway 4 to 3-lane configuration was controversial, and it really should not have been, but poor implementation, the wrong time of year, helped lead to that. But we had 5 pedestrians die crossing Broadway over a 7-year period, and that the 3-lane has really helped that. There is transition issues, and when I talk to people who have heard the so-called road diet is not working, it's a lot of times they haven't either tried that section or it's the transition. And so one thing I like about this plan over 2 years is that the consultants have recommended extending the 3-lane to Madison. So Mr. Mayor, I'm going to have to give you a phone call soon and see what your thoughts are on that. I think it could be a really positive thing. That was the original intention of the 4 to 3-lane conversion, was California Street to Madison. Now that was cut in half, and now it ends at Orange. The bike lanes end at Orange, and we have these transitions that don't work quite well. Madison would be a great place to do the 3-lane. We had another pedestrian die in front of the Missoula Children's Theater 1 month after the 3-lane was implemented, but it did not go all the way to Madison like it probably should have been. Bike lanes through downtown, that would be an amazing thing, but I also understand waiting for the downtown master plan might be prudent also, if that's what you choose to do, because that's looking at how we move about in downtown. But we all see the traffic and the left lane clogs right now today as we speak. A 3-lane can be an elegant solution, but that's just part of the bigger Broadway plan, so let's keep the conversation going and make sure our land use and transportation work for everyone. Thank you.
Anyone else care to comment this evening? Yes, sir.
My name's Jeffrey Kingsley. I'm just a cyclist here in town. 3 lanes for me is really important.
Mr. Kingsley, would you make sure your microphone is on
I have
for us,
no
please?
idea how to
It's
use
okay.
it.
There's a green light there, and you may just need to step a little closer.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So the 3-lane road for me is really important. I find it very difficult without mirrors and miscellaneous resources to ride a bike and cross over 2 lanes of traffic, especially on Broadway. I travel up to Reserve on many occasions, and we all know Reserve is not the friendliest cycling route from the South Hills. So Broadway gives me an opportunity to use Mullen, and Mullen is also a crazy route to try to use a bike lane or to cross over 2 lanes. So potentially if we have the option of having a 3-lane road on Broadway, I can utilize Higgins more as well as Broadway more to find a safe route so that I do not place myself at risk or any other cyclist at risk or any individual who may potentially hit me. Psychology of it could be wait. Anyways, thank you. It's just my opinion.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bakke?
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm Gary Bakke, and I represent the Missoula Area Chamber of Commerce. Each one of you should have received via email a document from the chamber, a cover letter addressing a survey that was done by the Missoula Area Chamber of Commerce of its membership. Also, you should have the results of the survey. It's a Zoomerang document, and I'd like to just briefly touch on that. This particular survey went out to all of our 1,000 members. We had a response of 250, which is a very high percentage. We're at a quarter of the members that responded back. We tried to be extremely careful in the verbiage in our questions. We had 2 of your council members participate in the verbiage, and I would like to thank Jason and John. Both participated and helped us keep it as non-biased as we could. Basically, the first question is very simple. Is your business located in the West Broadway corridor? There are not a lot of businesses in the West Broadway corridor from Orange Street to Russell Street. We did get 13 businesses respond back. So that's a fair statement from those that are there. I would say that we're a little higher or right at the 25%. The second question, how has the change in roadway design on West Broadway made a difference in your business? Understand, again, we had 250 responses, and only 13 of them were businesses on the West Broadway Road. We had a very good response in that 53% of them were neutral. The other response was we had 3% that said it was somewhat to very positive. Only 3% of businesses stated that it was a positive move. So that leaves us with 37%. 37% of those responded said it was negative or very negative. That's a strong statement. The third question, how has the change in the roadway design on West Broadway changed your or your employees' experience traveling in the downtown area? So in other words, what is your driving habit? Is it the same as it was today, as it was before the diet? Has it impacted some mode of how you're moving around downtown? And if you look at the results, they're astounding. Not at all, 13%. 87% had some kind of impact, and that's businesses all over Missoula. A little better or a lot to the better, 6%. 6% of the businesses felt that it was better. What's that leave us? For those who say it's a little worse or a lot worse, 75%. That's fairly astounding. 75% of the businesses say that it impacted them negatively. The fourth question, the eastern beginning of the 3-lane configuration on West Broadway starts at the intersection with Orange Street. This has created a backlog of traffic east on Broadway to Higgins Avenue. To eliminate this congestion, Council has discussed 3 future design options to Broadway. One option would continue the 3-lane roadway design east from Orange Street to Madison Street. Question, do you support this proposal? Again, this is very astounding. Yes, that they would support this, 11%. Pretty low percentage. Neutral, 10%. No, they would not support that, 78%. That's a strong statement that business does not wish to have the roadway changed on East Broadway. Our last question, what would you like the Missoula Chamber of Commerce to advocate for when council debates adopting the West Broadway corridor study into Missoula's growth policy. Again, we had the question, adopt the corridor study as written, 4%. 96% of the businesses would not like it adopted as written. Adopt the corridor study as amended to eliminate three-lane options, 22%. Reject the corridor study in its entirety, 14%. Delay consideration of the corridor study until after the Greater Downtown Master Plan is completed, 46%. Take no position, 8%. So we at the Chamber are here asking that the decision, which it sounds like you have taken this position already, be delayed until after the Downtown Master Plan study is completed. And thank you for your consideration. Appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else care to comment this evening on this item? Yes, sir.
I'd like to say I disagree with all of the strong figures because they only represent businesses that are part of the Chamber of Commerce.
And sir, if I may ask you to identify yourself for the record, please?
I'm Jeremy Hood.
Thank you.
Anyways, they only represent a certain percentage of businesses, but the truth is we shouldn't be listening to businesses for this because if the businesses were so interested, they would have come to all of the public meetings because I did go to them. And their reflections would be in the plans because the consultants, which we paid quite a bit of money for, and it's been more than one consultant issue that's come up with the three-lane idea, have all found the three-lane to be an option for us that is their preference, and that's the community. I think the community should have a bigger voice than the businesses because the businesses don't exist without the community. Even when the community says, hey, we would shop more at businesses if we felt safer walking, biking, crossing the road, parking, doing anything. We're getting ignored by that by the Missoula Area Chamber of Commerce is kind of what I'm getting from this. It seems to be kind of a funny thing we're listening to, trying to make a decision on this. While I would like this to be integrated into the master plan, which I think would be very wise, I also think at this moment trying to kill it off is kind of a statement that could be made. It's in progression of continuing to kill off three lanes, even when the community wants it. So we're just listening to those that don't even have business on Broadway, so it's personal opinion of them, of a lot of their employees, et cetera, driving through. But that's only driving, and considering the transitions may not be that bad, or may not be that good, because maybe it should have been implemented all the way through instead of just partially. This study seems extremely weak to me. I can't see why these strong numbers are so important when the community's not in favor of them.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Hello, my name is Laura Lundquist, and I work at a business that is just off West Broadway, PBS&J. And I ride my bike every day throughout the winter and throughout the summer. And I will say that the three-lane has been a very good thing for me. While I don't know that bike lanes or sidewalks necessarily encourage people to walk or ride, I do know that the lack of them discourage people. And if anybody's paid attention to the gas prices this summer, they have shot up, and a number of our employees have resorted to riding their bikes in order to save money this year, and they have all commented how nice it is to ride in our section of West Broadway and how difficult it gets once you get beyond Russell or beyond Orange Street. And if the prices are going to continue the way they are, more people are going to be resorting to bike lanes, and if there isn't safe places for people to rise, we're going to see a rise of incidents of people being hit. So this is just a matter of providing for increased traffic due to whatever reason. I don't think that gas prices are going to come down that much more. If anything, we'll probably see them go up. So encouraging, or not, at least not discouraging people to ride, I think is a very good thing. And I haven't seen any traffic problems. We haven't had any problems with people coming in to our business as a result of this different sort of configuration. And I will agree that the difficulty is in those transition areas, and I also would like to encourage an extension of the 3-lane. However, a lot of this does need to be incorporated in a larger plan that's a little bit more far-sighted, so I can understand sending it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lundquist. Mr. Shannon.
Hello, my name's Craig Shannon. I'm in support of any plan that would make pedestrians and bicyclists downtown and throughout the city more safe. I think if you take a vote and you have the bicyclists and the pedestrians vote in and weigh in and against the people or against the cars, the automobiles are going to win every time because there's just more of them. So 99% versus 1%, it sounds like a big number, but it is. We're a minority. It doesn't mean that it's the wrong choice. There's no right or wrong choice. It's a personal choice. But if more people biked and walked, it'd be a completely different community, I think. It's a way of life almost. It slows things down and it gives you a chance to kind of reflect. I think that if it felt safer, more people would do it. And it wouldn't be just the minority who are willing to tough it out. And it's kind of dangerous out there, especially on Higgins. And trying to cross Broadway, 4 lanes. And it is dangerous. So some of us are willing to take the risk because we know the benefits. If we make it safer, and it's going to be more encouraging for more people, not just high-tech, macho bicyclists, but I mean people who want to just get to work and take a nice, slow, easy, relaxed time. It's not more of a mode of travel as opposed to a recreation. If we have it more bike lanes, it's going to encourage people. It's going to be more safe, and more people are going to do it, and it'll just change the way Missoula feels. And I also think of Ann Arbor, Michigan. When maybe you consider other cities when you do your studies, and you want to see how other cities are getting along. You probably have already done that. Ann Arbor came to mind. The downtown is 2 lanes. How about I thought of one up in British Columbia, Nelson, BC. It's 2 lanes. It's crowded. It's congested. People are walking all over the place, and the downtown in both those cities are thriving. And if you're smart, you park and you walk. The downtown stores are not suffering. But downtowns are booming. So I may be taking a radical approach, but I really think it'd be an interesting experiment. It'll never happen. But if you close the downtown to cars altogether, I think it would be novel. It would be an interesting experiment, but I think people would come to Missoula because it's like Mackinac Island. You ever been up there in Lake Michigan? Mackinac Island is north of Michigan, the tip of Michigan. You can't drive there. You can just take a boat, and people flock and spend money. So anyway, I'm in support of anything that would encourage walking and biking. I think it's healthy. I also want to say that I cross Broadway 2 blocks west of Higgins daily, maybe 3 times a day, back and forth with 3 little girls. And on bicyclists, sometimes we're walking. And if you've never done that, I would urge you to get out and walk and or bike and or try and cross these streets with a couple children hanging on you. It's scary. You got to wait for all 4 lanes to stop. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes 2 lanes will stop and the 3 lanes will stop and 1 won't. And then you've got to explain to your daughters why you shouldn't go yet, and then you're walking out and somebody comes zooming by you. But I'd urge you to get out and walk, please, if you haven't. I'm not trying to insult anybody, but check it out. It's very dangerous. And so anything that we could limit that. The 3-lane idea, I think, is a nice one. So I've taken up enough of your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else care to comment this evening? Ms. Wilson.
Nancy Wilson. I live at 1402 Phillips. I just wanted to talk about the public participation that has already been requested by the city through this process and the respecting the participation that has happened through this process. Everyone in Missoula had a chance to come to this process and participate in it. Many of us spent many hours participating, doing what was asked of us, having a lot of education, which is another part of it that I see that maybe some people have missed. In particular, there was a great show that one of the consultants, a slide that he showed of what people's peripheral vision is at different speeds of traffic. And it was interesting. I mean, we learned a lot through this process. We didn't just talk. We learned a lot about different ways to build our city. We looked at a lot of different slides. I mean, it was a very educational process. I think that when you take something outside of that process and incorporate it into it, the people haven't had the same chance to have the full education of the process. And the weight of that decision coming into that process just skews the whole thing. You didn't get in on the process. You didn't have the full discussion. And it was a very vibrant discussion, and it was a broad section of Missoula. And it is discouraging to people that take time out of their personal lives to participate in all of these things, to then not have them followed through with. So I hope that you choose not to disrespect those that have participated in the process. I appreciate Dave's suggestion that this be, connected to the downtown process, but I also believe that it should stand on its own. It was put together on its own. It should stand on its own, and it should be incorporated with the rest of the zoning and whatever growth policy in Missoula, because it was a process unto its own. And yes, transportation connects to each other, but it's kind of hard to take that and say, now we need to add in the chamber's survey. Well, they weren't in the process. Or maybe some of them were, but not probably the whole 285 that were, whatever it was, 200 and whatever. I mean, I just think it's important that people participate when the chance is available, and if they can't, they should send a representative. So thank you. I appreciate you continuing to do good work on this council. I think Missoula is one of the greatest cities anywhere. I've been traveling this summer and been at many communities where downtown is dead. And usually downtown is dead with 5 lanes of traffic and nobody's on the street. And it's not a pretty sight. Many stores are boarded up. What's important about Missoula is we continue to have this vibrant Karas Park. We continue to have all sorts of activities downtown, people walking, people biking, people are interacting with each other, and it's important. And Broadway and this visioning process is an extension of downtown that will only make Missoula healthier. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to comment this evening? Please step right up. Mr. Austin.
Rod Austin, the director of the Downtown Business Improvement District. Basically, just want to thank Dave for recognizing the opportunity to wait for the master planning process to take place. It's been a very broad-based, community-driven group that brings in probably even more input from the whole community than the original group on the Broadway plan did. And I was very active in that group all along. There was quite a bit of controversy, and there still is on that. So it wasn't necessarily as cut and dried as it is made to seem at times. We do need, and yes, I've not seen the results of the chamber survey, and there was a comment about not listening to just the businesses, but the businesses are an important aspect of what goes on in this community, and no, it's not everybody that that lives in this community, but we do have to pay attention to it for what it is and pay heed to it as part of the process. Both sides need to come together. There can be something done on that avenue that is good for everybody. We just need to keep working at it, and I think the move to wait for the master planning process is a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to comment this evening? Yes, sir.
Jim Appelt. I live behind Home Depot. I've never spoke here before, but I've talked to the mayor. I drive West Broadway at least 5 times a week, and I just have a short opinion. Why spend a lot of money to redo that street? I have no problems with it, and it works very good. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Appel. Anyone else care to comment this evening? Yes, sir. Please step right up.
My name is Brooke Stanley. I live over on Pine Street. I have 2 observations. One, I've been to St. Pat's, Safeway, Secret Seconds, and that cool discount bakery store via automobile, and got in and out with absolutely no problem or to do. I think the 3-lane works for automotive traffic. The other thing I've got to say is I live on Pine, so I go down to the library to use the internet daily. And getting across the street can be tricky. Even though people are supposed to stop, it's like that fellow was saying, when you've got the 4 lanes, some people stop and some people don't stop. But it's noticeably easier to get across the streets with 3 lanes because only 2 people have to slow down. I think it's a good thing, and I would be for a 3-lane extension. I think it would work out. So that's my point.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley. Appreciate that. Anyone else care to comment this evening? Yes, sir. Mr. Wolford.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor. My name is John Wolverton. I live in the Franklin neighborhood about on 8th Street, and I did participate in the charrette process for the West Broadway. I wasn't able to get to the follow-up meeting because I was out of town. And I do ask you to support the iteration of that came from that process, which hopefully will include a 3-lane Broadway all the way through. I wanted to speak a little more generally and wanted to basically kind of talk about what I hope you would view all this as sort of an underpinning with, we see these problems and disconnects in our society every day. We see symptoms of our disconnected society in all sorts of what seems to be pathologies where people can't seem to come together or can't seem to connect with each other. And part of that is because we built a society for cars instead of people. Towns are for people, they're for citizens, and they're for the residents. The term consumer has turned our world on its head, where a person's value is judged by what they buy, and that's not the way we should be looking at things or valuing things. Folks want to live here in Missoula for a quality of life, not in order to buy things. I hope you can be leaders in making Missoula a safe and comfortable, walkable, bikeable community. Within a future of modest, at best, or perhaps deprived energy supplies, it is imperative that we plan for a walkable, focused inward community. I ask you to please be the leaders this community expects you to be and not protectors of business as usual. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else care to comment this evening? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Are there questions from council? Mr. Weiner.
I just have a few items that I'd like to talk about when this comes back to committee. One, I understand that we did a survey of the corridor to determine exactly what right-of-way we've got so far. I don't know if that's correct, but if it is, I'd surely like to see the results of that, because a lot of the discussion is centered on how this will fit in the roadway. Also, I'm curious about the difference in noise levels in the 3-lane versus the 4-lane and rereading this. I was surprised at how much of this doesn't talk exactly about the road, but what kind of uses you can expect along what kind of roads, and I think probably noise is an important consideration there. And then I had a question about how the parking recommendations from the plan would fit into site plan review, if incorporating them in the growth policy is sufficient, or if something more toothy needs to be done.
Thank you, Mr. Weiner. Any other questions this evening? Mr. Wilkins.
Well, through this whole thing, I kept hearing how the businesses didn't feel like they were being listened to and that stuff. Mr. Bakke, this is your last chance. Get the businesses to turn out during these committee meetings and let's hear from them what they have to say. I really want to hear from them, so.
Mr. Childers.
I have a question for Ms. Buchanan. I see her hiding in the audience back there. Since all of this conversation is centered around the road configuration, and since I don't think that was the thrust of the plan, could you tell me what the thrust of this vision plan was? Why did we do this?
Ms. Buchanan?
Ellen Buchanan, Missoula Redevelopment Agency. I think we did it for a couple of reasons. There was a lot of community discussion about the conversion of 4-lane to 3-lane, and there was a need to kind of have a public discussion about that. But the bigger reason, at least from the perspective of our board and our agency, was that this community had never developed a vision for the Broadway corridor. It's an extremely important corridor. It's the gateway to downtown, or one of the major gateways to downtown. And you know, it runs right through the middle of Urban Renewal District 2. We understand, I think, that that's a transitional area, and we're going to see changes through that corridor. And our board felt that it was important to engage the community and develop a vision for the Broadway corridor that we could then use as a guide as people come to us and want to use tax increment funding to redevelop property, but then also if there's some modifications needed to the roadway, that might be a tool to help those happen. That's my best shot at it.
And I think Mr. Childers' Ms. Buchanan shot is a fine one and right on target, and that's the reason I brought this to council. The reason I brought it to the MRA board was to address the very issues that Ms. Buchanan just mentioned. Ms. Walzer.
I want to make sure that we're clear that when you're talking about the Broadway corridor, now this plan is just on the West Broadway portion of it. Was there initially a plan to include the entire Broadway corridor, say from Russell to Madison, and then it was decided that the Orange to Russell was in more need, or I've got several questions, but that's the first one from what you just talked about. Are we talking yet, Ellen, is it just West Broadway you're talking about, or was there an initial plan for the entire corridor study?
Ms. Buchanan?
You know, I can't speak to what the initial study area was going to be, because frankly, I think it probably predates my even coming to this position. By the time the MRA was asked to get involved in this and made the decision to help facilitate this corridor vision plan, it was constrained to Orange to Mullen, and did not include anything per se east of Orange Street. Obviously, the consultants took a look at that because those transitions are problematic at Orange, where you drop a lane and where you drop a lane to the west. So they looked at that and they made some suggestions, but the scope of that particular plan did not go to Madison. It did not go west of or east of Orange Street.
And then I have an additional question.
Ms. Walzer?
My last question involves if we decide to defer this or send this back to committee. I'm kind of curious about the process, as a member talked about this being potentially a standalone document. Is there a discussion of reworking this to fit into the downtown master plan? Or I believe the downtown master plan references this plan, as well as the north side and west side neighborhood plans. So I guess the question is, what do the consultants think would be the best, or possibly you think the best order of having this all happen as one big lump sum, or have this plan be approved and then as a building block that the downtown master plan is built upon.
Ms. Buchanan, would you like to be on the spot?
I just drove 12 and a half hours, so if I'm not very articulate, excuse me. We discussed this in committee, and what I said then was I think you can do it either way, and it's the council's prerogative. One of the reasons that I think this was brought forward at this point was because of the adoption of the modified North Side, West Side plan, which deferred to the Broadway corridor plan to deal with Broadway, whereas the original North Side, West Side neighborhood plan included Broadway as part of that. That said, I think you can either deal with the corridor plan now in advance of the downtown master plan, and it might in fact be modified by the recommendations that come out of the downtown master plan, and if you adopt that, then I think that legally that subsequent adoption would modify the Broadway corridor plan. Or you can wait. I mean, the greater downtown master plan will be done this fall. So we're getting closer to this fall, unfortunately, all the time, and the summer's whizzing by. So I think it's council's prerogative, and I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer, in my opinion.
Additional questions? Seeing none of those, Mr. Stromer?
Yes, Mayor Engen, I would like to send this back to committee, and if I could just have a couple seconds to explain that.
Yes, sir.
I think you already pretty well articulated my rationale, and as Ellen mentioned, we're just a few months away from taking up what will hopefully be the draft downtown master plan for our consideration. So there's not going to be a significant lag time between now and when that plan comes forward. My preference would be that we bring to this body two plans that we could bring into congruity at the same time, rather than envisioning adopting this plan now and then maybe amending it at a later date, or simply letting it stand and having the downtown master plan superseded in some sense. So I don't think there's any harm in giving this a little bit more time, a few more months, and bringing two plans forward that will inform each other.
With that, Mr. Stromeyer is elected to return this item to committee without objection. Seeing none. If you'd like some comments, the item will be back in committee for further discussion. Typically, we don't comment, but we'll do it tonight. Mr. Hendrickson.
I'm in favor of sending it back to committee, and the minority of the council tried to do that at our last committee meeting and got turned down by the majority. So I find it curious that now we're going to do it. But that being said, I do support it.
Ms. Walzer?
I've been wrestling about whether or not these two plans need to be dealt with separately. And one of the things I think that's leading me to agree to send it so that the two come together, as Dave said, is, to me, the inappropriate focus on the aspect of transportation, 3-lane, 4-lane. The West Broadway Vision Plan had mostly to do, or essentially to do, with land use. What is the future for this area? What do we expect out of it? Is it just going to be a pass-through to get to downtown, or is it going to be an extension of downtown? And so that's where I saw, and I believe in the West Broadway Vision Plan, what came out was an extension, different from downtown, but an extension of downtown, and making it a vital place for living and working, and for retail and recreation, and a lot of opportunity, not just a road. So 3-lane, 4-lane, all important discussions, but it's only a small portion of what this is about. And since we're talking about these two side-by-side areas that are vitally connected, I think it is appropriate to now talk about them together. I don't see that the West Broadway Vision Plan changing much in this process. I think it's an excellent product, but I see that with strength in compatibility, strength in cooperation. The two will have a much stronger voice together.
Mr. Wilkins.
Well, I support Dave's motion to send it back. In committee, I supported the issue of trying to wait until the downtown plan and the Broadway plan was, we could work on them together. I think the majority thought that we were probably trying to do away with this meeting that we're having tonight. That wasn't my intention, but this is a more of appropriate way to do it, I guess, tonight than what I tried to do during committee. But we reached the same agreement that I think it's good to see the downtown plan and this together and see what we come of it then. So I'll support that and call the question if that's possible.
Yeah, there's
Can't
no motion.
call the question.
No motion on the floor, unfortunately. Mr. Jaffe.
Just to respond to John's question of why it goes, there seems to be support for sending it back now, but there wasn't in committee. The discussion in committee we had the discussion about the relationship between the Broadway plan and the downtown master plan, and the consensus or what I felt came out of that discussion was that the public hearing process and the discussion within the community would be useful information for the downtown master plan. And that's why I believe there was support for bringing forward this public hearing. And it was discussed at that time that it would most likely come back to committee afterwards, but that there would be value in having the public hearing and the public process, so it could inform the downtown plan.
Any additional discussion with the admonition that this item is going back to committee for further discussion? Mr. Hendrickson.
It's not a comment, it's a question for, not to be answered now. But a third option as a standalone document would be adopt the charrette plan as a working document and not part of the growth plan. And next time we bring this up in committee, I would like you to explain to the rest of the committee or of the council what that would mean, please.
And according to your rules, one member has elected to return this item to committee. That's where it will be in plat annexation and zoning. I'm assuming, Mr. Jaffe, that you'll hold off until the downtown master plan is complete, or is that an incorrect assumption?
I don't have a schedule set for it yet. Yeah, I'd like to consider how the two work together, and maybe with the folks working on that plan to see how it seems like would be best.
Your call, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. We'll move on to our third and final public hearing. Ladies and gentlemen, a public hearing on the draft fiscal year 2009 budget and our capital improvement plan. Ladies and gentlemen, this public hearing has been held open for a number of weeks and